So Moises, we have something back in the league that we haven't had in a few years.
Interesting that you say that we have something back in the league.
Yes. Yeah. This appeared once before. So as a sleeve sponsor for
Mm, mm,
NYCFC,
mm.
and now it is back as a back of the jersey partner for our beloved Houston Dynamo, who Austin FC is going to be playing on Saturday.
Whoa, 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 whoa,
Do
whoa,
you remember
Phil,
who I'm
Phil,
talking about?
Phil. Wait,
Yeah.
let's be accurate here.
Mhm.
Lower back of the shirt sponsor.
Yes.
Lower
Yeah.
back.
If you don't tuck, which most of our players don't, and you really
Even if you do, I looked at where the mark is. It's right under the number. Unless there is the
okay.
most extreme backside tuck of a jersey, there is no getting dude wipes off of the back of every Houston player, which I'm sure that entire roster is probably thrilled about.
That's right. Dude Wipes is back as a sponsor, the official back of the jersey partner of the Houston Dynamo. Got a press release today about it.
Including the on sale date when people will be able to buy the jerseys with it already on there. And you know what?
Mhm.
If you have a non dude wipes version of the jersey, you'll be able to have that added free of charge.
Right. You can take it to the stadium. They will put that Dude Wipes logo
They will put that
on the back of the jersey,
they'll
the
get
lower back of the
they'll
jersey.
get those dude wipes on you. All you have to do is go to the stadium, Houston, and they will get your ass covered.
So it is part of a multi-year agreement. So multi-year, so not just this year, but this is going to be around for a while. They announced this new multi-year partnership, naming the fast-growing personal care brand the club's first ever official back of jersey partner and exclusive disposable wipes partner. As if they would have to challenge other disposable wipes for the right to sponsor them. The agreement extends beyond the jersey to include community programming, match day activations, digital content, and fan engagement initiatives across Houston, including the partnership's tagline. And I'm loath to share this with you. Space City has Uranus covered.
It was your journalistic duty, Phil. Emphasis on duty.
I feel so dirty. Beginning with the Dynamo's August 1st road match against Sporting Kansas City. Okay, pause, record scratch. You know what that means.
What does that mean, Phil?
We're not going to see dude wipes when Austin plays Houston. They're pushing it specifically to the week after. Curious.
So, traveling Austin fans could bring their own homemade signs that say "Wash Uranus."
Right.
Wow.
But it will be so less clear to people until August 1st in that case.
Wow.
So so it will appear on the back of all first team jerseys. Houston becomes just one of four MLS clubs to feature a back of jersey sponsor during the 2026 season. I'm not sure that that's a good thing. Oh wait, aren't we possibly one of those for having the Yeti third kit? Yeah, maybe that's us too. Fans who've already purchased a 2026 jersey will also have the opportunity to add the back of jersey branding to their existing kit. I am sure so many people will take them up on that. Dude Wipes is exactly the kind of partner we love working with, a brand that's unapologetically authentic, knows how to make people laugh, and has built an incredibly loyal community by staying true to its personality, said Nico Zini, Chief Revenue Officer of Houston Dynamo FC, who wants to go home and curl into a fetal ball after being quoted as saying this, I'm sure. Together, we'll bring that same energy to our fans through creative activations, meaningful community initiatives, and unforgettable match day experiences. And as our back of jersey partner, it's only fitting that Dude Wipes literally has our backs. There's more. There's more. They are going to, among their new content initiatives, We've Got Your Back, presented by Dude Wipes, a short form series recognizing the often unsung individuals who help players succeed, from family members to groundskeepers and staff. Fans can also look forward to Clean Sheet equals Clean Back, a recurring social feature celebrating every Dynamo shutout during the MLS regular season. So they are going to celebrate the often unsung individuals who help players succeed by using
Creating,
a hygienic wipe to
yeah. I, the,
I get what they're doing, but also, oh my God, I do not get what they're doing. Also, beginning in 2027, the partnership will also expand to Houston Sports Park with additional branding and fan-facing elements at the club's training facilities. Maybe not fan-facing, but
Yeah. Phil, the last thing I expected us to have to talk about today was dude wipes based streaming content.
here we are, though. Here we are.
Emergency podcast. They did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, oh yeah, shut up, oh yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. We have Austin FC emergencies. We're back. We're back after 2 months of not really being able to talk much about Austin FC, other than, of course, Jim Curtin being hired as the new coach and Danny Pereira being traded to CF Montreal. But we have games. We have actual games to talk about. We have a game against Seattle on Wednesday. As you are listening to this, it is going to be at 8:30 p.m. to avoid some of the heat. Saturday, team goes to Houston, another Copa Tejas battle to battle the Houston Dude Wipes, as I'm sure they will be called by 2028, replacing the Dynamo. Moises, how are you doing? You had a very interesting day.
I did.
By the way. So yeah, tell us about what you did.
Well, so we've got a variety of things to get to, but as a great lead into that, for a little while, I had been chasing a midseason check-in interview with Captain Ilie Sanchez. And so we're going to lead with a chunk of that and then come back, discuss the things we were already planning to discuss, because he beautifully dovetailed into a variety of the things that we wanted to talk about. The open practice, how people are looking, injury report, do they, don't they play Jorge Alastue, the pre-Seattle presser with Davy Arnaud, the introduction of Przemysław Płacheta, a.k.a. Palachi, as we learned, expectations for the second half of the season, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, before we dive into all that, there's this chat with Ilie that gets into what we haven't seen from the outside that he can uniquely give us some insight in, and then we'll be right back.
Yeah, so we had our very undignified cold open into this very dignified conversation with the very dignified Ilie Sanchez.
Transition.
I guess what I wanted to get into was a bit of the state of the team. There's a lot of work that you guys have done behind closed doors, in practice, in friendlies, during the off season here. And I think what a lot of the fans and a lot of the media are hoping to get is some perspective on not just what you see the team having to play for, but what you've seen from your teammates, what expectations you think are reasonable about what's expected to be a tough schedule for every team in the league, not just Austin. How has the work that's gone in this midseason break contributed to what you think you guys are capable of for the rest of 2026?
I'm very excited for what's to come. We resume the season tomorrow at home against Seattle, and that's the first thing that I have in my mind. Going back to our stadium in front of our people and having to play against a very good opponent, a solid opponent, a role model team that has been doing really good things for many years. And that also to test with this challenge where we are at as a team after the end of the first part of the season, the break, and our preseason, 5-week preseason here in Austin. I'm very excited about that. I'm also excited about Houston on Saturday, Colorado the following week, and the Leagues Cup tournament. And this is what's on our minds, and that's what we've been working for all this time. It might not seem or feel enough for a team that struggled in the first part of the season and now obviously needs to catch up for this second part of the season. But at the same time, I don't see or feel that people has many expectations. That's something we cannot control, and that we need to focus on the stuff that we've been working on, because yes, there is no much time to get things right. We are doing everything we can, believe me. And we just now need the last part, which is starting to compete. That's when the things get hard, challenge get bigger, and we need to see the reaction of a team that has been working very well and very hard, but that the only way to test all this work is competing and starting tomorrow and following with the next games.
One of the things that I've seen in the press and in fan chats and so on, discussion of players who are no longer here, discussion of other teams, but focusing on the roster that is here, the second team players that have been training with you guys on the first team, some of them with first team contracts. What have you seen that we don't know? Those of us from the outside, we don't know what we don't know. You were talking a little bit about what you're excited about and what you're excited about having seen. How would you classify the group's cohesion, their connectedness? Has there been any sort of progression in your mind of how connected you are as a group on the field, off the field, that has benefited from these past 5 weeks?
We had changes within the structure of the club, of the team, and we also add Plachi. We add other players that come back from injuries or hard times in their careers. And also, as you mentioned, we're having players coming from the second team that are adding a value into the team and what we do. So that also should be exciting for everyone. I'm excited about that too, as a player, to see full roster, full potential of what we have within the team out there. It's encouraging. We just need, again, to confirm my feeling and my thoughts competing tomorrow, Saturday, next Saturday, and in the Leagues Cup. So these first games will be very important for us to realize where we are at, because, again, and I think that you think in the same way, expectations are low. I'm not sure about the chats that you're talking about with the fans or the media. I try to stay away of all that noise, which to me is very positive. When there is noise around a team, even if it's positive or negative, we like to feel that way. We like we embrace, but at least I embrace the fact that people is very interested, very involved, engaged in what we are doing and wants the best for the team, because that also grows motivation with what we do. But I can only tell you that to me, it's exciting to see everyone back, everyone working hard and ready to go for this second part of the season.
One of the things that is obviously very different is now you're under interim head coach Davey Arnaud. And without giving away tactical plans and roster decisions and that sort of thing, what has encouraged you about what you've seen about Davey stepping up into this role, which he's served in the past for this team and at other teams as well? What encourages you about, again, I know you're not going to give anything away in terms of potential changes in mindset outside of maybe generalities, but what should have people excited in advance of Seattle on Wednesday?
We all should be excited about seeing very clear what the team is trying to do, what we are trying to execute on the field, and mostly that we stick to it. There will be times where we find the rewards right away, and then it will feel almost easy. But other times, and it can happen tomorrow, that we start slow or things don't go our way right away. And then what we should be expecting, the team that sticks to what we know it will work, because it's what we've been working for 5 weeks now on and off the field, especially on the field, but also off the field. And this is where Davey has been very clear and helpful with all of us, is that what he asks us to do and what he preaches for, he sticks to it and he stands for it. So I don't think there will be much room of negotiation in what we're going to look and execute on the field. And that's something that I believe that our supporters have been aiming for, especially this season. Probably since the beginning, I wasn't here, but from what I hear is that they want to build this connection and this identity where they feel represented by their players game after game.
So, speaking of the fans, what do you think is most important about fan feedback? There was the one of the things that sticks out to me is the booing as you went into the locker room for halftime in the game against El Paso Locomotive, and it's perceived that there was some motivation that that provided, even though it was what could be classified as negative feedback. It's something that helped in the recalibration that you guys were doing. Is it most important to be positive all the time, or is it most important to be
No,
honest all the time?
no, it's not the negative feedback, it's the real feedback. They come to the stadium, they pay their tickets, they pay their season ticket members, they expect to have a good time. And I think, and after talking to the main groups of supporters, that obviously we value every single supporter in the same way, but there are groups that are organized and that are behind us at all times, no matter what. What they really want to feel is that there is a connection between us and them, and that this is the right atmosphere that they want to experience when they go to the stadium. The result is important, the performances are important, and I'm going to quote one of them, one of the leaders. They want to lose with us. So this is a thought that's very meaningful because they just want to be part of what we are doing, and that's exactly what we want and need from them. They feel that they are part of everything we do, especially on the field, because that's what they are there for. So real feedback, especially, or obviously when you see the full stadium sold out scene, or I have experienced since day one, that's what brings the most out of us, but also feeling part of the show from the stands before, during, and after the game with real feedback is all what we could ask for.
So you mentioned something about team identity, and I guess going into how you see your role as the captain. How do you feel being the captain of this team has changed your perception of that job, where you've served that role in the past for other teams? What's been different for you about Austin? Has it been about the specific things the club has undergone during the time that you're here, the difference in player dynamics? Have you gotten differently involved in other levels of the club, the second team, the academy, and so on? How has it been similar across the different clubs that you've served in this role? And how has it been different for you at Austin in particular?
A few different ideas about this. Let's see if I can get all of them. First of all, the captain is just one more player. That's how I perceive, that's how I live this role. Second, I would be behaving in the exact same way with or without the armband. I've always behaved in the same way because that's who I am, and that's how I see and I take my profession. This is a job to all of us, and that's how we should be acting and behaving when we are around the team dynamics. Third, obviously, guidance, maybe not guidance, but guidelines from our coaches, from the people that higher up within the structure of the club, make everything, I wouldn't say easier, but clearer for us to follow and to actually demand or make people accountable with what we want to do here. But also, fourth idea is that sometimes, that's something I learned here after a year and a half, you have to understand that, and especially nowadays, that the groups or this group sometimes needs something different from me. And I cannot expect everyone to behave the way I do, to think the way I do, or to even to spend the amount of hours and time that I do here at the training center or the stadium. And that sometimes I have to either chill down a little bit or step away from situations that to me are very clear how they should be, but that maybe my way won't help in that specific situation or that specific teammate to perform better. I'm not helping them by pushing, I'm not helping them by demanding. Some people need me to treat them differently than what I think they should be getting. Do I make sense?
Yeah, it's a complex balance of personalities that you have to deal with where you're setting an example and simultaneously you are their teammate. You are one thing and you're also the other thing, and the perception of those things, the balance of it is something that varies depending on those personalities, is the way that I'm taking what you're saying. Do you feel like these last 5 weeks have given an opportunity for you to recalibrate some of your own perceptions of what some of your teammates need from you? There's only so much that I assume you would want to say about the differences under Rodo and since Rodo's departed, but has there been something of a recalibration because of the different environment, because there are different voices at the table, leadership wise, that you and your teammates are dealing with?
That's all I'm trying to do. There is now some different in charge that set very clear values for this group. And what we're trying to do is follow, first of all, each one of us follow these values with our behaviors. And after that, being in any other way possible. It's simple. At the end of the day, it's simple stuff, but that when it's clear, it becomes just something that you follow. Yeah, that you follow every day. Nothing that we haven't done before, but I would say that it feels different from that perspective.
What do you see as the most important thing, win, lose, or draw tomorrow night against Seattle? What do you want the audience out there, the fans, the press, people to keep in the back of their minds? Whether it's about the humanity of the players whose all of your careers are uncertain things. You don't know where you're going to be living, where you're going to be playing, whether you're going to be in a particular position in terms of selection preference on a given roster one day to the next. Just on a human level, what do you think is most important for people to recalibrate and start this second half of the season with?
You just answer yourself because I'm not able to. No, and it's very positive. I'm saying it in a very positive way. I'm not able to put myself there yet. In my mind, there is no other option than winning tomorrow, or at least having a performance that gets us very close to win. If we lose, then we can talk about how we feel, ideally not right after the game. If you could wait, so we analyze what we've done wrong, what we could have done better or more. That's when we can, or I can give you a professional thought or opinion about it. I'm excited about tomorrow. I'm excited about winning. We are in a moment, in a situation that's, as you said, uncertain. And that's why I cannot put myself in a negative scenario because I don't have the answer. I don't know what I will need, how I will see it then. But also, I want to think and manifest a positive outcome tomorrow night. No matter what, there will be a training session to do on Thursday, a training session on Friday, a trip to Houston by bus, and a game against a rival, a derby, on Saturday. Better if we have a positive outcome. If not, we will deal with it after the game.
Transition.
So we've got another chunk of the interview, got a bit more time than originally I had bargained for, that will go into our next episode that talks with Ilya a bit about where he sees his career going when he's done playing, which isn't necessarily anytime soon. His thoughts on the hire of Jim Curtin, who he was on the opposite side of things from as a player at LAFC, and what I considered the best MLS Cup match in league history, as well as some of his reflections on the World Cup that just finished, and got some interesting pull quotes, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm so glad you got that. That's amazing. I know you've been chasing this down for a while. Love to be able to share that with the people.
Then they fired their sporting director and coach, and that kind of puts a delay on basically everything that was like, cool, so we're going to do this next week. Okay, maybe we're not going to do that this week.
Right.
But speaking of this week, here within the last week, season ticket members were treated to an open practice and a team meet and greet event at Q2 Stadium. You were there. I was there. What did you pick up on from the open practice? Were you listening with rapt attention when head coach Davey Arnaud was mic'd up? What got to you? What takeaways do you have from it, if any?
Yeah, I tried to. I was on the opposite end of the stadium when he was facing the west end where the press box is and all that. I was on the east end because they had the small field grid where they were doing a lot of the small goal, the 2-on-2 drills. So I wanted to take that in. I did hear him say something like, we're getting ready for the game, which is pretty obvious. And I think they had him inadvertently like mic'd up for about 30 seconds at one point, like in the middle of the practice, and heard an errant swear word and then a lot of wind and not much else. But it was good to see. It was good to see some of the other Austin media out there. It was good to see some fans turn out. Not quite the throng that braved the cold in the preseason one last year. Of course, we are a little bit more maybe bereft of hope at this stage in the 2026 season than we were at the start of 2025 when that first open practice happened, where we first met Ilya Sanchez, or at least most of us first met Ilya Sanchez. I, of course, got to meet him a couple years before at All-Star in Minneapolis, but I digress. So I did write up on Saturday just kind of some thoughts from the practice, and the big main takeaway I had, and I know this is a possible source of contention with some folks. I know that there's at least another podcast that does not think that this is necessarily a good idea, but based on what I saw from Jorge Alastue and his performance in the practice, of course, he is basically the hungriest person out there, right? He is trying to prove that he is worth not only a supplemental roster spot, but the international roster spot that it would take to get him there. And based on what I saw and based on just what I'm thinking about the rest of the season, I don't think it's a bad idea at all to use that spot on him through the rest of the season. See what you've got, showcase him. If you're not going to keep him, if he's not on the MLS level, at least you may be able to shop him back over to Spain. Maybe there's a Segunda or a lower La Liga team that can utilize him. Or maybe, again, if he is on the USL championship level, like Valentin Noel was, it's good to know that. I suspect that he's a little bit higher than that. Again, he's 23, he's La Masia trained. This is maybe his possible entry into the league. And I just think if he gets a run of games, he might surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, I like to take a page out of Ilya's book where it's like, whatever podcasts don't believe that that's a good idea, I don't listen to them. I'm glad that that noise is out there. It feeds me, though I don't listen to it. But having watched so many of his performances as the second team, I sent you a link just as we were getting ready to record just today. MLS Next Pro posted an interview with him that it reads evergreen enough that it could have been done, 5 weeks ago before the World Cup break, which Next Pro notably did not take away from playing. And it's all about ambition. It's all about this was that league showcasing a guy who they see as, I'll say, a Sam Sarver, that I think they expect to make a big impression in the top flight league, that they expect to see taking those first team minutes. And that's very much the angle of it in the way that they highlight it too.
May get a first team showcase before Curtin comes, as if somehow maybe they were tipped off somehow to this news.
The thing is, timing is, on the one hand, I would love it if MLS were that good at timing. At the same time, I feel like it might just be dumb luck. But also, tomorrow morning, we could have this, as we record this on Tuesday, this announcement that Jorge Alastue has gotten this first team supplemental contract. I'm with you. I think not just letting him show himself and figuring out some of the midfield depth issues. This is no criticism or anything of Danny Pereira or anything, but with Danny no longer on the roster, just looking at how things work and how things are built,
right,
and who operates how, that does open up some space for, these are the guys that are in this many spots ahead of these other guys in terms of who gets that spot.
There's not a sporting director right now.
Right. That factors into, the goal is to win games. There isn't the three-dimensional chess that there would be with a sporting director. There are folks who are like, this is irresponsible. They should have had somebody lined up before they fired the old guy. You know what? Maybe that's how it works in a video game, but this is real life. I'm sorry. The reality of things is that this is where the club is. They do not currently have a sporting director. And I think looking at, commenting on things subjectively based on what's actually in front of us, rather than, well, if there had been a sporting director hired 3 weeks ago, well, guess what? 3 weeks ago, there was not a sporting director hired. This is where things are, and them being focused on win the games, get into the playoffs, do well in Leagues Cup, I think gives a more pure assessment of what should their depth chart look like. Who is getting that guaranteed starting spot, having earned it? Everybody is in a position to re-earn or earn for the first time their spot.
Right. Yeah, and I think on the face, they are going to say winning, doing well in Leagues Cup, getting into the playoffs is priority number one. And sure, that should be your professional sports team. You're in a competitive league. You're not mathematically out of the playoffs yet. You should be doing those things. But I think you should also be setting up for the next era where you have a top tier coach. You're ostensibly getting a sporting director that's going to be in lockstep with that coach, right? Because that's probably the hire they want to make. And you want to figure out what you have for those future years. If, let's say, Austin gets into the playoffs in 2026, do they win MLS Cup? I mean, anything is possible.
Anything's possible. Betting odds say they have a less than 1% chance, but you know how I feel about betting odds. As relative the actual health of an individual roster and what roster.
But there's also the question. But there's also the question of does the current first team midfield, will they as configured fare better without Jorge Alistue as a contributor versus if he is a contributor, if he is part of that? And that's, I think, a question that they want to answer, or they should want to answer at least.
They've got Leagues Cup congestion coming up. They've got what we've previously analyzed as a second half of the season schedule that I think every club, not just Austin, is facing just a real gauntlet. I think even just from comments that we got from Nico and from Davey, we expect that Austin has at least assessed that better. I think that maybe fan bases, people who are covering other clubs, to some extent, no offense, are a little bit resting on laurels of, well, Seattle has always been blank. Well, San Diego blank. Well, LAFC blank. But, for example, and we'll get to this, Seattle dropped their injury report. They've got 6 guys out and 2 guys questionable, which is really not much, or I don't think it's different at all from last week. But
where they lost 5-1 to Portland.
Against an interim coach playing their first game. And you've got to look at the realities of where things are right now. You cannot go, well, if I were playing EAFC and both Roldans were healthy, guess what? They're not. They're not even either one of them questionable. They're both out. And you've got to look at what you've got. And as disappointing as it is to see Mikel Dessler and John Bell out for this game, Brendan Heinzike not being able to go a full 90, compared to a lot of other teams in the league, they're actually not in as bad of shape as they could be, which is not trying to mince words here. But there are other rosters that, I mean, you can look at those 2 big names from Miami that get a mandated 21 days of rest and talk about their relative quality. But where are their heads at after the World Cup final loss that they just had? There's a lot of those kinds of variables that don't show up on stat sheets that I think a lot of people are going to be surprised by a lot of different teams' performances. They just expect to be a certain way, in maybe the American football way, the New York Yankees, Chicago Bulls of the 90s kind of way of, well, they're just good. Well, they're just this. That's not how these rosters in this bizarrely salary capped league, as many have described it, ourselves included, would put it.
Right.
But signing a lost away to a first team deal, beyond giving him a chance to prove himself, beyond it honestly being necessary for midfield reinforcement, a guy who's been here, a guy who knows the system, a guy who knows the other guys, that is not disruptive, being brought in as yet another new guy on top of Placci, for example. Like, if they brought in another new guy, are you risking the cohesion of the guys that are here by bringing in a guy on a big number? I think you do. I think you do. And I think a lost away is the inverse of that. This is a guy who is respectful to his literal and relative elders, to the guys who are making the top dollar at the team. He is a team player. He has been a team captain, focused on team play, as he was well taught at La Masia and at Napoli for the second team, where he is a playmaker, but he is also a contributive playmaker.
Right. The other thing too, and I don't know if there's eligibility for a lost away that doesn't necessarily, because we know that he's not eligible for any more league games, but I'm looking at the Leagues Cup roster rules right now, and it is a little bit fuzzy. Players must be confirmed by their respective league and comply with all registration requirements of the respective league. Players with a pending international transfer certificate may be submitted for registration, but these players will only be eligible to compete in the tournament once confirmed by their respective league. So I don't know if the restrictions about 2 league games also hold to Leagues Cup, or if they'd be eligible for Leagues Cup, but you have to have at least 26 players and no more than 30 players on your Leagues Cup roster. So, I do wonder how Austin's going to get to that number, because I don't think with the supplemental players that they have now that they're at 26, or maybe they're right at 26. But if he can qualify under the rules without having to worry about that international and the short-term call-up deal, maybe that's a place to test him. I wish I knew more about those roster rules. Something I want to dig into, mental note for myself, but maybe that's the opportunity. And he'd be doing it against Liga MX talent.
The kind of temporal limbo that we find ourselves in is, by the time this posts in the morning, it could be that there's a supplemental deal signed and they're done and dusted.
Right.
But just speculatively, it may be a matter of waiting until the summer window closes, if there is something that they are trying to get over the line that would use that international roster slot. But I don't know. The way that Davey was cagey in answering, he's difficult to read in various ways. Right. Not to say that he's dry, but he's just very straight ahead, shoots straight. And it could just be garden variety cover for, we're going to announce him on Wednesday morning so that Brian Schmetzer and the Seattle Sounders don't have more time than absolutely necessary to review tape on the guy. Right. Totally plausible. But it could also be, to your point, seeing what they can get through on these 3 games in advance of Leagues Cup, and then seeing how things go in Leagues Cup, playing cautiously. But I don't know. If it were my caution to throw to the wind, it feels to me like if he's going to figure in the team's long-term plans, it's good to go ahead and get him in the trenches now.
This is the time to answer that question.
Yeah. For me, it's go ahead and sign him from a sporting perspective, because that gives you more to work with when it comes to dealing him if you're not going to keep him long term.
Exactly. And if you're not going to use that international spot on him in 27, it will revert back at the end of the season.
Right.
So you don't have to use it in 27 if you figured out that he's QSL level, or he can be shipped overseas, or maybe he showcases in Leagues Cup if he's eligible for that, and a Liga MX team is interested in developing him further, because they have maybe a better system for doing that with their players, because there is that gulf between MLS Next Pro and MLS, and certainly Alistue is above what MLS Next Pro is right now. This was the interesting quote from Arnaud. You talked about that, so I want to read this like word for word, just to kind of, again, I mean, it's not cagey per se. It's not like really tipping his hand, but I do think that there's some interesting nuance and things to read into with this, if you so choose. Jorge in particular is one of those guys that has come up and he's done a really good job every time he's been a part of it. When he's played the first team games, he's been really good. He raises the level of training every week, and we saw that firsthand on Saturday. With that international spot, we're looking at different ways that we can occupy that, and there are some different things that we're looking at. But just as other international players are open for that, we're also open to second team players becoming part of the first team, so everything's kind of open at this point. So, and again, I don't know that kind of the way that they're front office is built right now without a sporting director, that they do a high dollar signing and bring that across the line with an
Yeah.
international spot. That doesn't seem.
High
I mean,
dollar, I don't know about. High dollar, I don't know
yeah,
about.
the Poeta move happened because that was in place before.
Yeah, it was done in February. I mean,
Yeah, there was
and
already a
you know,
pre-contract. Yeah.
for the benefit of people who haven't been following us talking about that, that's something that we are fully to understand. That's a deal that was literally done in February. And just because it wasn't announced until his contract actually expired in England, this is a common thing. That was a deal that was already done and dusted a ways in the past. He looked very, very fast, very sharp in the open practice. But hey, that's training, and we'll see what he does in an actual game.
Yeah.
But I don't
He
know.
looked like he belonged, but
He
I don't
did.
know if he belongs as a starter necessarily. But
Yeah.
yeah, it looks like he'll eat some minutes. He'll do some good things. He'll run fast.
He'll get
probably
used to the
luck into
heat.
a goal here and there. Yeah. Well, we hope.
But with a lost away, it's the kind of thing that there are so many arcane things built into the MLS roster rules and the MLSPA collective bargaining agreement. Can they sign him to a 6-month with a 1-year option? Is that a thing they can do? Do you sign him to something like that? Or do you sign with the season schedule resetting after the sprint season? Do you sign him to a 1 year that expires during the summer break next year in
Maybe
advance
that,
of
yeah.
the reset season
Yeah.
with a 1-year option on it? And depending on how things go, you potentially re-up him if he really balls out before the end of this year, so that you have him on a more dealable number if you end up dealing him
Right.
after that renewal.
Or if you're concerned about the international spot and having that revert just in case you want to do a move in the January window, then you give him the audition for the half season and see what he can do and see if he justifies a senior roster spot. Or I guess he could still be a supplemental with the roster rules the way that they are.
Yeah.
I wanted to get one more thing from practice. The level between Stuver and Loss. Definitely felt lucky that we had Stuver, but was a little concerned about kind of where Stuver was versus where Loss was. And maybe it wasn't the best possible day for Loss, but I just felt like Stuver was kind of more effective in goal than Loss was. And Loss is developing. I think he's great. I think he is going to be a first team goalkeeper at some point, but I am less and less convinced that that's going to be for Austin. I think that probably the move to make if he needs to really leave the nest and fly is to go to another team where he's got a shot at making that starting goalkeeper spot, kind of like Stefan Cleveland is doing now at SKC. He got the chance to compete there, beat out Polskamp, and now he's been primarily the starter there. And that makes a lot of sense. And SKC is not doing great, but he's certainly holding his own as a first team goalkeeper. And I think Loss, given that choice, given that chance at a team where he could be competing against somebody who is not Brad Stuver, I think he'll have a better chance of securing that spot than if he is still competing against Brad Stuver for at least the next 2 or 3 years, given kind of what we're seeing in the level of excellence that we're continuing to see from Stuver, even though he's not an all-star goalkeeper, but Maxime Crepeau is. So
Yeah, for whatever reason, LAFC2 legend Maxime Crepeau, their fourth best penalty taker. Yeah,
saw him in the World Cup.
The only thing I'd have to add to that is Danny Pereira getting traded to Montreal is an example is a young fan base. This is a fan base that's going to have to get used to the fact that various long-standing players will eventually age out, get traded, get transferred, that sort of thing. I'm not saying that's going to happen anytime soon with Brad Stuver, but it's interesting to look at what the goalkeeping pipeline is going to be at the club. Mm-hmm. If they deal Damian Loss somewhere, who becomes the backup? Who do they bring in that is the Cup goalkeeper? Presumably Damian is going to be between the sticks for Leagues Cup. Who is at least Damian Loss good for Austin to trust in Leagues Cup and Open Cup, in theory?
Yeah. There are backups around the league. I don't know that I don't know if any of the Verdos keepers that they currently have on the roster are able to jump into that sub role.
They're pretty good. Eric Lauta, he's no slouch.
Okay.
Charlie Farah is solid too. It was Charlie and a different second team goalkeeper who's not here anymore, who were goalkeeping in practice for the MLS All-Stars last summer. Charlie got injured earlier in the season, which is why Eric Lauta has been the guy for the second team. I would like to see how those guys hold up in what a lot of people are thinking could be a second championship run for the second team. Right. That was the fire in which Damian Loss was forged. So maybe that is what, beyond the incredible streak that the second team had before it was sadly interrupted by their new most hated enemies, Minnesota United too.
The game I showed up to.
Yeah, it's all your fault, Phil. We've said it's all your fault. Yeah, remains to be seen what the second half of the season looks like for the second team. I think there's definitely really solid reason for optimism there. As we've discussed, I'm a bit more optimistic about the first team feeling the urge and focus to prove themselves with the benefit of rest and work and conditioning that they've gotten to do in the roughly 2 months without a game, 5 weeks of full break. There's a story that we're going to see play out however it plays out, to some of the stuff that Ilya was saying. And from talking to him, that I'm optimistic about what I felt like they needed to come back with, whether it was MLS Next Pro players that were fighting for their spot on the first team. And as we saw for a number of weeks, a bunch of the guys with first team contracts, plus Jorge, were actively pulled from second team duty, and they kept up that streak without their best on the stat sheet players, right? That was incredibly impressive. And that they didn't just bring the guys in for the odd scrimmage. Based on what Davey was saying, I feel like we're finally going to get them to play the kids, as it were, which one of my big sticking points with Roto that he kept repeating the same stock lines on me with was believing that the talent gap was vast, kept using the word vast. And I didn't see that as much as he did. And that wasn't being overly optimistic about these young guys, but to use CJ Fodre as an example, a guy who came in clutch in dead minutes, sending the team to a cup final. That's the kind of thing that you want to see from these young players to come in clutch when they are needed. And if you don't give them those opportunities, well, you're forcing a small sample size on things. And however you want to look at the second half of this season, I'm buoyed by what I'm seeing in terms of the faith that they are putting in their younger players in a way that we haven't even before Roto came into the picture. This to me is a first time that the club is really actively activating that younger player pool. And I feel like at different times, maybe it's just my perception, it's felt like, well, if you play these younger guys, then the guys that are on more money, the guys that feel more senior, they're going to be maybe more reluctant to pass to them or whatever. I don't feel that kind of reflex anymore. That's where I'm at, is it feels like there isn't that kind of stratification, whether it was enforced by the sporting director or relationships in the locker room or perceptions or whatever it is. I don't know. It feels like it's more than just, okay, yeah, we're practicing and scrimmaging against these younger guys. It's that all of these guys get that they all need to look good. They all need the team to come back from this extreme points deficit and ball out for the second half of this season and show what they're made of during Leagues Cup. And I'm planting a flag right now. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people against Club America, and I'm going to cite the Monterrey and Pumas games for anybody who thinks that's insane.
You've been doing that for a few weeks. So
just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. On MLS Next Pro, the talent difference is considerable, but there are players that obviously break out from that, players who are stars in that league that have the opportunity to be next level. Like we saw that with Valentino Well, but again, we saw that at the USL level, and I just kind of doing some research discovered that yes, he is now on a team with Kip Keller, Sofiane Jafal, who was I forget the mechanism at the moment. I think it was like a reentry draft or something crazy where he came from DC United to Austin FC briefly. And then Gideon Zelalem, who was once a wonder kid with Arsenal and a USMNT candidate who they're all playing in Albuquerque now as teammates. It's real weird.
And they all played in Cristo Fernandez's first game in El Paso Locomotives blue.
Or at least they were
history.
I don't know if they all got into the game.
They were all on the roster, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah.
I'm not saying every MLS Next Pro player needs to be, let's call up this kid from the academy who happens to be playing on the second team. There are those guys, to your point, that they are a cut above, and that should be the way that developmental league is
Right.
utilized. We don't know what the future of the second team is, if it's going to be one of the clubs that moves in the way that North Texas moved to Mansfield, which is technically North Texas, but is outside of the main metro area that Frisco's in. But I like what I'm seeing in terms of building the player development pathway, which has been a recurring criticism of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Because again, yeah, like having the academy feed into that, like that's not something we've seen a lot of, Eric Feliciano notwithstanding. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, you want to get into some of the Davy stuff. So yeah, what struck us both, I believe, is just that Davy Arnaud was also traded to Montreal from a situation where he was comfortable, where he had built up relationships over many years and thought that he was going to stay there for a long time. Davy even more so. Davy was in SKC for a decade and was a captain before he was traded over to Montreal during their expansion year before they got into MLS, and actually ended up being the first goal scorer in Impact history back when they were the Impact, entering MLS in 2012. Thought that was kind of interesting that he brought that up. Danny being a fan favorite and everything, there's that dimension of it, but also it's this kind of major chess piece that's off the board now that he's going to have to deal with. And it sounds like from what he was saying, there's some stuff that they tried to implement during the break that they're pretty happy about having done. I don't know what that is necessarily. I don't know if that's formational. I don't know how much of that is going to tactically transform the team, whatever it is that they've implemented. But I do think it's interesting. And I do think that not only whatever formation they roll out in, but which starting 11 they choose on Wednesday will be pretty telling in terms of how this changes significantly from the way that Nico Estevez played them. And again, is this more of a reversion to what Josh Wolf did? Was Davy Arnaud more in lockstep? Is there going to be Jim Curtin influence, even though technically there's not supposed to be? If Austin comes out in a 4-2-2-2 high press, I don't know that necessarily that's all on Davy Arnaud, but just kind of curious to see what we're going to see. But he does seem optimistic. He does seem upbeat. He also kind of went back on the earlier kind of sentiment after the St. Louis game that he wanted to get right back out there the next week and go. He acknowledged that the break was good, which clearly I think all of us would agree that it was, right? So anything jump out to you about it? Oh, we did get some injury report stuff. So Mikkel Dessler dealing with an Achilles issue. John Bell, he didn't specify. It turns out it's a pubis. He is out for, as you were listening to this tonight's match. And then Brendan Heinzike, he is ready to go. Again, we don't know if he's necessarily going to be full 90 from that hamstring, but it sounds like he's possibly going to be a starting selection. I would expect him to go and maybe go 70 or 80 until they can't stand it anymore and bring in Djordjevic, I think is probably what they're going to end up doing. And then Brandon Vasquez just had a little ankle tweak in the Charlotte game that nobody saw or heard anything about or knows anything about. And that's why he was doing the individual practice drills on Saturday. Didn't have anything to do with his knee. His knee's great by all accounts. And it was just a little ankle thing that they were being cautionary about, but it sounds like he might go too. I suspect that he will still come in as a sub. I don't think he'll get starters minutes, especially just coming off the break with the rust and having maybe a little ankle ding, but I could see him maybe going 20 to 30. Any thoughts there on anything you heard or what we could expect based on this?
I think just overall, the caution I have given myself and that I would urge on others, yourself included, is I am preparing for that team sheet to look like anything. Like, I have no expectations of what that team sheet is going to look like.
Well, good. And then you will be pleasantly surprised, I guess, by the
no. What I'm saying is, I don't know what that team sheet's going to look like, and I kind of don't care until I see how they play 45 minutes of soccer. At the end of the day, all of these guys have like 8 weeks of rust on them. Some of them have not played a lot of competitive soccer for some time before then, like Brandon, but they're going to need to warm back up. Seattle has gotten one match under their belt, below their belt, you could say, to start to knock off their own rust. So that, to me, Seattle's biggest advantage is they've gotten one match, one competitive match. And
they dude wiped in that match, but
oh boy,
they did play one.
They did. I want to see how, whatever the lineup looks like from Austin, I want to see how they play a full half of soccer. I cannot let myself judge that based on the way that they played 8 weeks ago, because 8 weeks of rust, 8 weeks of who knows what. I've got to treat this like the beginning of a new season, like the way that Liga MX does split seasons. Like this is 2026 Apertura. That's the way that I've got to look at it, or I will drive myself crazy. Even though the point totals transfer over and it's impossible to forget the first half of the season, and I'm not saying that people should, it's try to forget about, well, when added to the sample size of the first, not even half, but like first third to somewhere between a third and a half of a season that we got, to me, it's most important to, again, and Ilya wasn't in any way trying to like move goalposts on anything. I don't think it's realistic to act like this is the immediately subsequent game to the last game that they played in the first half of the season. That's just not realistic or reasonable. So I'm expecting there to be a little bit of jankiness. I'm expecting to see them have to warm into things a bit. And if they don't, if they start in firing on all cylinders and score 3 goals in the first half, nothing would make me happier. But in no way am I expecting that or demanding that. They need the space to recalibrate. And if they play like crap, I'm sure the fans that are there will let them know, because it's bobblehead night. Lots of people will be there, right?
Right. Well, we'll see. It is a later start. It is going to be screamingly hot. Yeah, bobbleheads notwithstanding. My wife and daughter were going to go, but then the later start time kind of scared them off, and I was just instructed to get a bobblehead for them. So that is my mission. Our season tickets, once again, are up for sale, which has been a pattern with the season tickets that my wife and daughter have ostensibly been using this season. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I would not be shocked if they came out with a pair of losses. I would be a little bit concerned if they came out with a pair of losses. I also would not be entirely surprised if they got 4 points out of these first 2 matches. I just don't know what to expect vis-a-vis the other teams, because Seattle came out initially good, but then the goal knocked them off their perch, and then it kind of went into a downhill slide. That was a very surprising, kind of uncharacteristic sort of performance for them. So that becomes a big concern, and I'm sure they're looking to bounce back. Houston, they're going to play DC on Wednesday at home, so they get 2 home games in a row. Again, I don't know necessarily how DC tests them. DC is doing slightly better than Austin now, but not really. They're kind of in the same tier, although the way that the East is working right now, DC would be heading to the playoffs as a 9 seed, and Austin, of course, is not. So just something to think about there. I think these are decently beatable teams, but they are right now, as they stand, playoff teams in the West, lower seeds in the West, but playoff teams notwithstanding. So just something for us to be concerned about. It's not the easiest opponents. We get Colorado away after that, and maybe that's a little bit more doable. That's something they've done before. But again, for me right now, my expectations are not so much about results and how they do, but do they look like they're moving into a formable direction where Curtin can take over and really implement his style and figure out which players are going to work and which players are not? That's more what I'm looking for in 2026, even though we are going to obviously report on the results and the playoff progress and using the phrase mathematically possible, I'm sure, towards the tail end of the season.
Like you're killing me with a relentless pessimism. That's what's killing me.
I'm not being pessimistic. I'm just I'm
rolling out mathematically possible, and we're not halfway through all of the fixtures for
the 14th in
the
the
season.
West. I mean, how can I not at this point? Yeah, maybe they do go on a tear. I'm not going to be, I think, as upset as other fans might be if they lose, but they're at least trying stuff, and you see them evolving towards a playing style that's going to suit them in 27. I feel like at this point, this is in a way a long runway preseason for what's going to come, rather than thinking of this as, okay, this is a do or die second half of the season. Playoffs are a must, playoffs are bust. I don't necessarily feel the same way about the season now, as obviously the players and coaches are that's what they're wired to do. But in terms of just kind of my general observations, if Austin FC doesn't make the playoffs in 2026, I'm not going to be upset. I'm not going to rip up jerseys or burn anything. It's more to me right now, what do they develop? What do they learn? How are they growing versus what kind of wins are they getting?
The big thing to me is every single player on this roster, whether they want to stay on this roster or whether they want to be transferred, will end up being transferred because of changes that happen in the winter window. All of them
Mhm.
need to ball out and show themselves because it behooves them for whatever their future may bring. A piece of what Ilya got into right toward the end there was that he's focused entirely on winning. It's not thinking
Sure.
about where they're at in the table. I know that for stat heads, it's like, well, look at these stats and look at where they are in the table. They're 14th in the West. I don't feel that that is a healthy way that sports psychologists would encourage them to think about the way that they play soccer.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like, well, here's what you need to do. You need to rub it in the dirt and just accept the fact that you're 14th in the West. Don't you know? 14th in the West, that's what you are. I don't see them building their value around that or having it as top of mind as you or I might. And to me, it's the thing that I don't get is the idea that they wouldn't try things and that they would not clear the very low bar of seeing what they can do and seeing what they can make the most of. I think a lot of that is looking at the rest of the league. I am expecting a lot more chaos from a lot of places that, myself included, that I reflexively think of as places of stability, top clubs that could completely upend what the first chunk of the season did to the table. Look at Seattle's injuries. What if that gets worse? If San Diego really is stuck with Chucky Lozano, as it seems like they really are going to be,
Right.
how much of an albatross around their necks is that? Is Chicago Fire really going to end up better having to offload Hugo Kuipers because they brought in Robert Lewandowski? I think the Fire could see a big slide. I think the effect that offloading a younger, granted, he wasn't necessarily long for the Fire roster, right? But it's kind of, well, if he's going out and this guy's coming in, I feel like there are going to be a lot of those kinds of looking at where things went wrong for clubs that look to be sailing into the playoffs, that look to be sailing toward the playoffs in Supporter Shield contention. In no way am I overconfident about Austin's going to have the craziest Mighty Ducks level comeback and they're going to be the Supporter Shield winner. No.
Right.
But I feel like the mid-table is not unreasonable or unrealistic for the quality of players that are on the roster and looking at what their injury load is, looking at what their group cohesion is, where there are other teams that are doing fire sales, fire trades, not Chicago Fire, but you get the metaphor, right? But that are making big moves that I feel could have a Chucky Lozano effect in more places than people expect, that cause serious locker room disruption because you have a manager or sporting director who thinks, well, we can bring this guy in and he'll be the new big dog and everybody will be fine with it. And guess what? That isn't always as fine with rosters as people like to overconfidently believe that it is. And I'll just point at various locker room issues around the league literally as we speak.
Sure.
That's the thing. I think there's so much more chaos in the equation than a lot of people are giving it credit. I don't know that bringing Kai Wagner back into Philly is going to fix the various problems that Philly has. Help a bit, maybe, but I don't know.
They shouldn't have sent him off in the first place.
Maybe they shouldn't have. But I mean, circling back to Austin has a newer player who is not used to playing in this heat just yet, but most of the roster is, and most of Seattle is not. Even with the delayed start time, I feel like the climate thing is something that Davey is one of the oldest hands at the club, one of the earliest employees hired that is still here. And I feel like being ready and bracing for that is an advantage that bears mentioning when it comes to Seattle coming here. On top of what does Seattle's schedule right after this look like? And does Brian Schmetzer really try to ball out really hard against an Austin that has stuff to prove? Or does he not try to risk re-injury of guys that are questionable that he might end up playing anyway, guys who might not even be listed questionable that he plays that might have minor knocks from training that could develop into full injuries? How smart does Brian Schmetzer play his position in the table relative just trying to keep his guys healthy
Yeah.
enough to make a playoff run. There are
Right.
those kinds of things that I never see Brian Schmetzer as a guy who's like, okay, we're going to punt this game. Okay, we're going to not worry about winning this game. But do you really want to push it in this specific environment when you're carrying that kind of injury load? I don't know.
Yeah, they go to, by the way, they go to Philadelphia Saturday.
Mhm.
The next Saturday, they go to Portland
Uh-huh.
for potentially a revenge match for what they suffered a few weeks ago. Then they've got Leagues Cup against Toluca, Querétaro, and Chivas. And then they host Vancouver on the 16th. Then they're hosting Austin on the 19th. And then Cincinnati, Chicago, Red Bulls, Galaxy, Colorado, Salt Lake, Minnesota, like that. Yeah, so sure, they're injured. They're not used to the heat. Maybe this is one that Austin just kind of gets through attrition. They get the draw or they get the win, perhaps. And then it's on to Houston. And again, it's Copa Tejas. Who knows? They don't typically do well in Houston, but they certainly have won there. They certainly know how to win there. Certainly possible for them to do that. That is one of the better wins that Austin had this year. Of course, it was here in Q2 against Houston, but definitely Houston's a team that they are confident to get. It gets obviously a little bit different when it's in that stadium, but yeah, certainly possible. But again, kind of circling back, my point is not necessarily, I'm not going to doom and gloom and say that they're going to lose all their matches or they're going to lose a big string of matches and it's going to be more abundant terrible. I'm just saying that I am more concerned ultimately about how they're playing, what they're learning, how they're growing, how this is setting up for next year versus what necessarily happens on the field this year.
The biggest thing that I took away from the conversation with Ilya was the emphasis on there being an understanding that there is one plan. There is one plan that everybody is working from, and there's not going to be a guy just deviating from it. These part of this is implication, but that was one of the most encouraging things to me with respect to what you're saying here, which is something that we identified during the first part of the season was where the hell is Biru and why is he look like he's not playing the same game as everybody else? Where is Sabovic and why is he not locking in and playing the defensive midfield stuff that he needs to be doing?
Yeah.
Where is
when
this
Danny
guy?
was
Where is this
confessing
guy?
to the confusion? Yeah. When Danny was confessing to the confusion. Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
That was encouraging to me. We didn't see any of this. We didn't see any of those friendlies. We didn't see any of that training. We saw one open training, but that was the begrudging little tipping of the hand that I think it's reasonable to take some stock in, because that was really my biggest concern the first half of the season was that there was that confusion as to which game plan everybody is on. And if they have well and truly worked on that, I'm totally good with them being slow out of the gate, either over the course of the Seattle match or it taking kind of the Seattle and Houston matches to get up to speed. I'm not predicting wins in both cases, but I think that both matches are winnable. And based on Ilya saying literally the only focus is on winning tomorrow night as we record this on Wednesday, I believe it's not just plausible, but that bobblehead night's going to surprise some people in some way or another. And
and we know there's not going to be
a total collapse. Could be a total collapse, but I don't. You're not saying that. I'm not saying that. But I got a feeling. I got a feeling like I did before the Monterrey and Pumas matches, and I look forward to seeing these guys play with the joy that they're capable of. That they are so hungry to take it from Ilya's lips for the energy and vibes of home. I think that even though the second match in less than a week is away in a notoriously muggy, terrible, horrible toilet bowl of a stadium, that it's a Texas Derby, that it's a Copa Tejas match, it feels like this is primed for building momentum, even if it takes a little bit of warming up of the engine.
Sure. Yeah. We know there's not going to be a Nico plan and then a Roto plan that's kind of shadowing over the Nico plan. We know it's going to be a Davy plan. And I think that's good. Yeah. And what Ilya is saying, I think hints at that kind of unity that, there is one direction and everybody understands what that is. My concern is just that there's a Davy plan and then everybody needs to learn the gym plan 6 months later. Like, again, Curtin is not supposed to be doing anything with the team right now, but if Curtin is establishing kind of certain principles that he wants to play with, stuff that he's talked about, and Davey happens to be doing some things that are moving the team toward that, then that encourages me more than if we see Wolf 2.0, essentially. If we see again that there was a reason that Dave Arnaud was selected by Josh Wolf, and it's because they're in lockstep, and then we're going to see those kind of tactics return to those kind of principles, and then we're going to have this completely different shift with, obviously there's going to be some players coming in and out the off season, but it's going to be essentially like a third system in 7 months that players are going to have to learn.
Well,
and that concerns me a little bit.
I think that's a totally reasonable concern. And here's where I would like to allay those concerns.
Okay.
Every indicator that we've gotten about what Davey's plans are from here, Davey's not auditioning for another job. Davey would like to continue to be at this club, serving as an assistant coach under...
Or so he says.
Okay, I'm going to take people at face value, Phil. I'm not going to assume disingenuousness. When the president of the club says that they would love for Davey Arnaud to stay, when Davey Arnaud in the press conference says that he wants to stay at this club and work under Jim Curtin, I take him at his word. When Jim Curtin has positive things to say about Davey Arnaud, they are projecting something. And I don't think they are trying to snow me. I don't think they are trying to put one over on people. I want to take them at their word and believe that, yes, even though Jim cannot directly consult with things, there was mention of there was a conversation and understanding of what Jim's intentions are and what style of play one assumes that he can do that is above board and doesn't involve like secret back channel Telegram chats or something like that. I'm going to take that at its word until I'm proven otherwise. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah. I think Davey staying in Austin as an assistant coach, I think he sees that as a pretty good gig. I'm just saying, if the DC United job opens up at the end of this season, and
Josh Wolf would be a great fit.
So would David. He finished his career there, and he started his coaching career in DC. So
he did, Phil. But show me a single instance of Davey Arnaud saying that he is interested in moving into a head coaching job. When we asked him directly what he wants to do, he was like, he loves this club. He wants to be here for this club. Like that to me was the loyal knight will serve whoever the king is.
That's the politically responsible thing. I think he means it, but I also think it's a politically responsible thing. And if he had an opportunity to coach,
well, here's how it's
as a head coach in the MLS level, I think he would take it, is all I'm saying.
I disagree because it's different than what he said the last time he was an interim here, where he was more cagey about, I don't know what my future brings. I don't know what my opportunities are going to be. Even then, he didn't voice interest specifically in head coaching, which may seem counter to the ambitious, you're an assistant coach and that's how you move up to being a head coach kind of ladder that you expect. He is such a, I'm not saying Davey's dry, but like I said, he's a straight shooter, like a reliable dude that you would see as a supporting actor in a billion Westerns. The guy's name escapes me, but he was in like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid and like basically every Western in the 1960s and 70s. That to me is the way that Davey Arnaud is presenting, until I am given any indication that he is really hankering for the heat of the spotlight. It feels to me like he is happy to be the interim coach of Austin FC, not because he actually wants that hot seat in the future, but that he is happy to keep the seat warm for Jim to come into and wants to continue developing. And everything he says now to me, even though there was that little bit of doubt when Josh got fired, says to me that this guy wants to be a club lifer. He wants to be here from beginning to end. And, you know, to your point, that can the absolute perfect opportunity could come up. But I have not heard anything on the record from him or other people in the club. Even with the Josh dismissal, there was that kind of caginess of, are you looking at Davey Arnaud as a potential head coaching candidate? Are you wanting to keep him around? And what they were saying to us is more cagey. But it felt like they wanted to go out. You don't do that dual firing without doing some very specific planning. It felt like they had that conversation with Davey immediately of, do you want to stay here? Do you want to stay here under this list of top coaches? And it seems like the answer was a resounding, absolutely, my sword is at the ready. That's the way I read it.
Okay. And I can see buying into that. Sure. Yeah. So, but you think that then his buy-in is going to lead to at least some sort of continuity, and that Arnaud will essentially kind of bridge to Curtin.
Very much. They told us on the record that he and Jim had a conversation, and if legally they are permitted that one conversation, the way that Jim talked to us in that press conference about what his intentions are, he seemed explicitly extremely clear, and it wouldn't make sense to me to say, yes, I would like to continue with this club and I would like to work under this coach, if he and Jim had not had a conversation about Jim's very clear, okay, here's why I took the job here. Here's the style that I want us to play. Here's what I want you to implement in the 6 months that you've got steering the ship while I'm on shore leave. In all the master and commander, Captain Jack Aubrey sense of things, that's the way it felt to me.
Okay.
And that's what my expectation is. And yes, I will be concerned if it doesn't look like we are seeing a fundamental shift toward the style of play that Jim described to us in that press conference, even with Jim not being in charge. I feel like those orders have been given for the guy steering the ship.
Okay. Within all the legal bounds of what they can do and not.
Exactly.
Of course.
Exactly.
Oh, here's this obscure Kim Jerton blog covering the Austin FC season and giving extensive game notes on each of these matches the rest of the season. What does Kim Jerton have to say about this match against Seattle? We'll find out Thursday or Friday. No, this doesn't exist. I'm just positing ways for kind of messages in a bottle that could emerge.
While Napoleon is on Elba, how do his armies go to war?
Okay.
Yeah. That's it, Phil. That's it. We've previewed the second half of the season.
We have gone long.
We've gone long. There will be a watch party at Hop Squad for this weekend's Houston match hosted by Los Verdes. All the same stuff that you're used to. Get those lovely tacos before they sell out. LV will also be set up selling merch.
Yucatan.
Yeah, get those Yucatan tacos. It's going to be a good old time. And we'll be back later this week, if briefly, to talk about the results of this match and what we think we're looking at headed into Houston with the second piece of that Ilie Sanchez interview. That we wanted to focus on the here and now and just kind of setting the stage for things. But yeah, if you want to hear the details of what might lead Ilie to walk naked in the mountains, stay tuned for that in just a few days. In previewing Houston, we'll give folks some stuff to listen to on the drive, whether you're going on the bus. And if you're looking for a bus ticket and you've never gone on the bus, if you're a member of Los Verdes, sometimes people put those up for sale at the very last minute. So you never know when one might turn up. So just check around with folks. And if you head out there, be safe. If you stay home, stay cool. And we'll be back. We think here.
Unless you're going to Hot Squad. Unless you're going to Hop Squad.
Unless you're going to Hop Squad.
If you go to Hop Squad, you will be hot, but there will be beverages to cool you down.
There will be beverages. There will be good vibes. There will be clack fans for sale. And It'll be a good vibe.
This is the best Austin FC related thing you follow in the history of 9 years I've been on this planet.